All right, folks, brace yourselves. During a Fox News interview conducted by straight, hard journalist Martha McCallum about the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump Jr., aka Don Jr., repeatedly claimed that political violence is exclusive to the left and the Democratic Party. Whereupon, straight, hard journalist Martha McCallum repeatedly pushed back against him and pointed out that no, I'm just kidding. Actually, that didn't happen. She just sat there in silence and nodded along as Don Jr. lied to the viewership of the biggest news organization in mainstream media, thus perpetrating the notion, the false notion, the lie, that political violence is only exclusive to the Democratic Party. And this is a big problem, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Now, you would think in these troubled times, given the seeming rise in political violence against Democrats and Republicans, by Democrats and Republicans, that Fox, the biggest name in mainstream news by far, would want to get it right, would want to be very careful. But you'd be wrong. So let's play some of these clips. This is Martha McCallum, who, again, this isn't Sean Hannity. This isn't Laura Ingraham. This is supposed to be a straight, hard news journalist. Watch these clips and tell me what you think, because I think she's now indistinguishable from Hannity and Ingraham.
The true crime is saying, that men can't be women and men shouldn't be playing in women's sports. I mean, these are not exactly radical concepts, although when the left realizes that you're losing arguments, they resort to this violence. But I see the constant, the violence goes both ways, and it does not, Martha. The violence is going one way. I've had to deal with, three.
Do you see that? She's nodding along. She's like, no, you're right. Yeah, the violence only does go one way. We'll continue, but just clock it. Clock the total lack of pushback.
Shootings like this to people really near and dear to me in the last 14 months, and I'm getting sick of it.
We've learned a little bit about these engravings, and
she just totally blitzes right by it. She doesn't say, listen, Don, with all due respect, Don Jr., I understand you're going through a lot, and I don't mean to diminish your pain, but it's not fair or accurate to say that this only cuts both ways. I mean, that's, and she could go through a list, as we'll go through in just a second, just to remind everybody. Instead, she just nods in agreement and moves on. Here's another clip.
I mean, I do find, and I know Charlie and I spoke about this frequently, sort of the irony of the anti-fascists these days. They seem to be taking a lot of playbooks out of the fascists, out of the browncoats. I mean, if you don't agree with someone, kill them. I mean, that seems quite fascist to me. So, I wish we would stop calling them Antifa, because there's nothing anti about their fascist tendencies. It's absolutely disgusting. But there is something very odd that someone could get that radicalized with none of those footprints. So, I don't want to speculate. I don't have any additional information about what these things are. Yeah. But I will say, watching the left turn this violent when they don't get their way, it's almost as though, Martha, they know they've lost the plot.
I want you to listen to that again. No pushback, but I want you to listen to what he said. Okay, violent when they don't get their way, they've lost the plot. Would that be like your father's insurrection against the United States on January 6, 2021? That sounds like a perfect encapsulation. When you didn't get your way, you got your ass kicked in an election, a free and fair election. Joe Biden won, and you committed an extraordinary act, or rather MAGA did, an extraordinary act of violence against the United States government by attempting to overthrow the government, attempting to break into the Capitol to intimidate or kill duly elected lawmakers to prevent the peaceful transfer of power and the certification of President Biden's victory. And that sure sounds like getting violent when you don't get your way and losing the plot. So again, I'm not sure Don Jr. is in a position to throw stones, given that we're in a glass house here. But again, equally as bad, Martha McCallum not giving any pushback whatsoever. You might as well just have a cardboard person, like a cutout of a person standing in there in the other screen. Or just, say, screw it. Hannity, Sean, get over here. You could do exactly what I'm doing, Sean, but you'd be more entertaining. One more clip.
They realize they lost the debate entirely, so they have to resort to violence. And contrary to what we're seeing elsewhere and online, it is not going both ways. It is going one way. It's coming from those aligned with the Democrat Party. The hate has been fomented by those in the Democrat Party, and you can probably play hundreds of hours of those clips. It's coming from the media. Some of them are doing a quick course correction and probably scrub their social media feeds for all the things they've said about Charlie, myself, my father over the last few years. But you can't call someone who you disagree with or simply can't win an argument with a Nazi, a fascist, a dictator, a greatest threat to democracy in the history of civilization, and then pretend you had nothing to do with it when the more radical wing, and there does not seem to be all that much difference to me these days, takes up arms and tries to kill those they disagree with. It's not one way. It's not both ways. It is simply one way. And anyone who's saying otherwise, should be thrown off the air.
So again, no pushback whatsoever. She nods along. She agrees, even though he's totally full of shit. And then he goes on to, articulate his censorious instincts because, of course, the Republican Party is replete with censorship. If you disagree, if you point out that there's violence on both sides, you should be kicked off the air. You should be censored. You should lose your job. Pretty pathetic shit. Not just from Don Jr., predictably bad from him, but from Martha MacCallum, again, a hard, straight news journalist, right? Not a MAGA Fox News host. She is. She's just quieter, shyer MAGA. Now, I want you to imagine, let's wind the clock back 12 weeks, okay? 12 weeks ago, 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota were shot along with their spouses by a deranged Trump supporter, a Trump voter. One of the couples died, okay? Melissa Hortman and her spouse. Now, I want you to imagine Martha MacCallum interviewing a Democrat. Let's say, I don't know who would, Jake Auchincloss. He goes on Fox News a lot. Or Pete Buttigieg. Let's say she was interviewing one of those two in the aftermath of the assassination of Melissa Hortman, okay? Then imagine Jake Auchincloss says, this only comes from one side. Donald Trump repeatedly called us communists and Marxists and said, you won't have a country anymore. If you don't win the election, you don't have a country anymore. Vermin, the enemy from within, he's riled us up. And this only comes from one side. And there really is no violence on the left. There's only the violence. How would Martha MacCallum react? Because I think we all know it doesn't matter. It could have been 5 minutes after Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot and killed. Martha MacCallum would have found it within her to go, whoa, hey, I'm sorry about what happened to these Democratic lawmakers, but you can't say that it's only on the right, the left. No, that's the point. They're hypocrites of the highest order. That was pathetic. Like, she should be shamed publicly for that nonsense, that bullshit, that demonstrably false narrative that she allowed to perpetuate. Again, it'd be bad enough if it were Hannity or Laura Ingraham, but they're propagandists, right? They're not supposed to be journalists. Martha MacCallum is supposed to be a journalist, and she failed, just totally violated her journalistic bona fides. Again, Zateo by Mehdi Hassan has a really good list of comprehensive, it's not comprehensive, there are probably more you could add to it, but recent high-profile acts of violence by right-wingers against liberals, progressives, and Democrats. The man who targeted and killed Democrat state lawmaker Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark in their home in Minnesota was a Trump supporter. The man charged with attempting the assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, in April was a Trump supporter. The man convicted of orchestrating a series of shootings at the home of 4 Democratic elected officials in New Mexico in 2022 was a Trump supporter. The man who tried to kidnap then Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and then assaulted her very old apolitical husband, Paul, apolitical in the sense that he's not in office, in 2022, was a Trump supporter, et cetera, and so forth. So Don Jr. is just objectively lying. And Martha MacCallum aided and abetted that lie on live TV. That is despicable and disgraceful and will only make the tension in this country worse when you perpetuate the notion that one side is perfect and the other side is demonic. Now listen, I make no bones about it. I think that the Democratic Party is the better party than the Republican Party in the sense it's got better policies, better values, in my opinion, a better successful track record, and that the country would do better under Democratic rule, including conservatives, I might add. I think they will prosper more than under Republican rule. But I've also made it very clear that the Democratic Party is not perfect. It may be better in my mind as a party, but it is not perfect. And even though I acknowledge the fact that right-wing violence is certainly more prevalent, I never claim, nor do I ever pretend or insinuate, that left-wing violence doesn't exist. Don Jr. went far in the opposite direction. He's like, I think it's worse on the left. He's like, no, it's exclusively from the left. And the right is perfect and angelic. And Martha MacCallum nodded along. Disgraceful. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.